So while we're talking about blood work, so ketos and the lipid panel. So one thing is, does keto raise LDL? I've heard that it can. And should we be concerned? I mean, so is there the solid science behind the LDL levels, or is that the same as the kind of the saturated fat story?
Um, we should book another meeting for this.
Okay.
You know what I'll do? I'll
Do a
instead, if
short
your
version.
listeners, there's a show called Health, Happiness, and Humankind, a podcast with Steph Lowitz out of Australia, and
Mm-hmm.
I actually did 3 hours on this axis of
Wow.
illness, which is the insulin resistance, inflammation, and obesity, and how that affects chronic disease, and how a ketogenic diet works on that. We did a whole other episode on just blood lipids.
Right.
So
Wow.
you can check that out. Again, it's Health, Happiness, and Humankind, and she's great. I've been doing a sort of regular guest on her show. So it's a really loaded question, because most people on ketogenic diets don't see a big change in their lipid panels, except their triglycerides drop dramatically. So they drop right down to base level because you're burning those triglycerides all the time. And if you want to raise your triglyceride level, eat a bunch of sugar, and that'll raise your triglyceride level dramatically. So ironically, again, when you're burning fat, when you're eating fat, which makes you burn fat, the fat in your blood actually drops. Now, they call it the cholesterol. It's the LDL, HDL, total cholesterol, and so on. The LDL and HDL are actually carriers, and the LDL are kind of the bad ones. They carry the fats out to be used in the cells, and if you have too much of that, they view that as a problem. The HDLs are kind of the good ones. They're the vacuums. They're going to clean up all the rest of the cholesterol that's not needed and take it back to the liver for more processing. So it's a very simplified way to look at it, but you want to have high HDL and low LDL, maybe. So most people don't have much change, but because there's really only a couple things that raise HDL. They've been looking for a drug that would do that for years. They've never come up with one. Alcohol consumption will raise your HDL. Yoo-hoo.
Yeah.
Moderate,
Moderate, yeah.
Exercise will raise your HDL levels over time. Ketogenic diets will raise your HDL levels quite dramatically. Mine's doubled. My wife's is like tripled. Like her, and that, it turns out, is a better measure of your risk of cardiovascular accidents, so strokes and heart disease, than just LDL. So LDL is the so-called bad cholesterol. It's not really bad at all, but so because your HDL is going up, if everything else stays the same, your total cholesterol is going to go up. So, but usually then they'll look at the total cholesterol, the HDL, and they'll say, no, it looks fine. But then sometimes they'll look at the LDL. In particular, probably about a third of the women that I've looked at that are postmenopausal have high, often very high LDL.
Right.
So it turns out there's more than one kind of LDL, and it's only the very small. So you need to know the particle size and the particle number of the LDL, which they don't even test for that in Canada, but you can get it shipped off to the US. So because we live right next to the border here in Vancouver, my wife and I, because she has high LDL, we just trucked on south of the border to get it paid privately and got the LDL full spectrum analysis done. And it turns out that neither of us have hardly any of the small particle size. And that's the one that correlates most strongly with cardiovascular disease. The other, the sort of light, fluffy LDL, because you're burning fats all the time, think of it as, like grocery vans. If that's the thing that you have to transport around, you need more grocery vans to carry it, because it's not water soluble like glucose is. Mm-hmm. So if your need for fats is going to be greater, you need more trucks to carry that fat around in your blood. And so your LDL levels go up for some people. And my wife's is, off the charts high. And, it's funny because her physician and her cardiologist, because she had a valve replacement, they're both sort of looking at her going, your LDL, you should be on a statin, and they're trying to convince her to be on a statin. And for various reasons, she's resisted. But her general point is, yeah, but everything else is fantastic. I'm slim, I'm healthy, my blood pressure is low, my triglycerides are low. No one can compete with me on the HDL side. It's high and great. And I have no sign. She's done a coronary artery calcium score, 0. So she said, I have no signs of any disease, but you're telling me just because this one marker is high, that I should go on a statin. And if you look at, 50% of people that have cardiovascular accidents, heart attacks or strokes, have absolutely normal blood lipid. And so if we're starting again saying, what's the thing we should look at to predict cardiovascular disease? The so-called Framingham thing says, well, LDL cholesterol is really important. I say, I don't know. I think what's happening with postmenopausal women, and by the way, in postmenopausal women, higher LDL correlates with longer lifespan, lower morbidity.
I hope that you found the video informative. Please do hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell button and choose all for any new video release notifications. It encourages us to continue to create more videos about anti-aging and extending healthy lifespan. Thank you so much for your kind support. I wish you all well and will speak to you again soon.